Personal brand does not work without a personality in it. And I have proof. I'm Sandra, ex-lawyer turned brand personalization strategist. In 2021, my life cracked open and my career changed with it. I needed something that worked for me specifically, not a template, not someone else's formula. What I found gave me a way to read patterns, rebuild my life and positioning, and turn self-knowledge into results. Now I'm building the research to show it to an even wider public. This is Personality First, where we break down how individualized brands are built and test what actually works. Take what's useful, leave the rest. Let's get into it. I want to start with my own case because everything I teach, everything I research, everything I build started here. I grew up in a countryside, 5 kids in the family, hard work from the age of 4. By 6, I was milking cows every morning before school. I learned early that if you want something, you work for it. Nobody gives you anything. At 7, I convinced my mother I needed music school. I wanted to be a singer, and I understood that singing into a hairbrush and at home was not going to get me there. She agreed. So after cows in school, there was music. Long hours, no time for friends. And at that time, it was really sad for me, actually. My brother and I were bullied also. I hated it, but that is partly what brought me to law school years later. I wanted to become so sharp in my words, so precise in argumentation that nobody would ever touch me or my brother again. I entered law school as a complete zero, by the way. No fancy background, like milking cows does not count as a fancy background for law school. No connections, no idea who was issuing laws in Latvia. First semester, I cried constantly. It was hard. I had to learn everything from nothing. And after that semester, I made it to the top and stayed there. So I did more than I thought was possible. After my final moot court, I received an invitation to law office during COVID, by the way, while most people were afraid of being fired. For everyone around me, it looked like she made it. A good career, master's in law, smart, beautiful, in a relationship. For me, I was dead inside. And I was so dead inside that actually I thought that to end this kind of life I'm having is a better option than to live like I'm living right now. I was really, really frustrated about my life. Around 24, I was as ill as an 80-year-old in a bad condition. Doctor appointment every week, medication every day. I wanted to not exist more than I wanted to live, not because of anyone else, but because the life I was living was not mine. It looked perfect from the outside and felt like a slow death from the inside because actually like work wise I was feeling like a function from this inner state. Like you cannot make results and even though I was like doing my best, I was really trying hard. I was good at many things, but I did not make the results I actually could make if I would know what I know now about myself then. And around that time, my oldest sister took me to the countryside with her. She was helping me through that period actually a lot. And one afternoon, she mentioned, like almost in passing, that her psychotherapist had offered her to look at her birth chart through some system called astropsychology. She didn't put any labels on me, my sister said. She just showed me my potential, where I should thrive, and how it looks when you don't use any of it. I had never looked actually at astrology as a solution to anything. I was not against it. But I was a lawyer, rational by profession, trained to argue with evidence, and there was something in my family history that had made me keep my distance from esoteric approaches. But I was desperate enough to be at least curious. I found a book on a system called Soul Formula, the system my sister's psychotherapist used. I spent half the night reading and analyzing. I saw things that at first felt like impossible, that this cannot be about me. Like, what? It's definitely for someone else. But one thing gave it away. Every indicator of unused potential was present in my actual life, clearly, loudly, and that hit differently than any prediction or label ever had. So I began to explore. I made on opportunity to lecture in the university. I started lecturing in private international law in a foreign language. For me, foreign language is English. which was terrifying at first. And only afterwards did I understand why I did it. I wanted to share knowledge. I started a blog on Instagram after it. I found the first 20 people for trial consultations to test whether this worked only for me or whether it had wider application. I started studying astrology in the best modern schools in Russia, ones with an empirical approach, analyzing data, researching effectiveness, improving the system. I added also psychology alongside. I studied for quite some time very practical approach, also in Russian language. I did not even notice my life changing. It just happened in 1 year. 1 year of doing the basics from my charts recommendations. But I was afraid to leave my job, of course, as many of us. First, afraid to make a mistake. Second, it was COVID. Leaving a stable salary during a global crisis felt, at least to say, insane. To understand my next step, I got in my car and drove to Italy alone. 10 days to think. I came back and called my boss. Several conversations with the law office followed, but I was completely certain it came from my gut and a bit from my brain because I had built a financial cushion first, of course. Within 3 months of leaving law, still lecturing at the university, but focused entirely on sharing my astrology knowledge on Instagram, I was making the same amount of money I had made in law with under 1,000 followers, by the way, in Latvia, a market of 2 million people. I spent 4 years building, growing my personal brand naturally. A guest lecturer in multiple projects, my own podcast appearances, an astrology school, infrastructure for other astrologists. I have a team of astrologists. Many skeptical people became my clients, and they are not afraid to say they thought it was a bullshit at the beginning. I understand them completely. The most common approaches to astrology worldwide are predictions astrology and what I call astrology of excuses, neither of which I practice or believe in. Then I decided to be nobody again. Like when I started law school, like when I started my astrology blog. Now I'm building in the English speaking market, and I'm entering a research based era, working to show empirically how understanding your personality shapes your results, your personal brand, your quality of life, your decisions, your cognitive patterns, not as a belief system, by the way. So you don't have to believe astrology so that it works, as a measurable, testable methodology. Every time I return to ground zero, I am not the same person I was before. That is the point. This podcast is where I document the next phase, where I break down the research, test what actually works, and build in public. Each episode, you will get either a case study, a concept from the methodology, or a finding from the research, without the mysticism, without the generic advice, and without the excuses. Take what's useful, leave the rest, and let's get into it.